Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. It's quite a calm day. The wind is rushing by. There's a couple of cars listening, but not too many. There's a bunch of screaming children in the background. You know, typical afternoon. Nah, it's fine, I just wanted to talk about that because I realised, it's not as quiet as I thought it was going to be. In fact, actually, it's actually quieter than I thought because I was imagining I actually brought my coat with me in case it rained. Because we've been having a bit of rain here recently, but I will go into more of that in a second. I feel like I'm Dave Pilkey going, before I tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. If you know, you know. Gotta thank my Auntie Jane for that one. Or at least the library that she used to work at. Anyway, of course, now that I come onto one of these roads, I actually end up being exposed to more of the cars. Oh dearie me. Well, yeah, if I always do with my hand there, was because there was a branch. Normally I'm ducking under things. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into the material. So I keep forgetting sometimes, but I did say before that the best way to go about these things and talk about the week actually, usually, unless I'm particularly passionate, is talking about the non-YouTube stuff first and then going into the YouTube stuff because there are some people who don't want to wait for the whole video to really look at, what actual other updates I've had going on. So okay, in that case, it hasn't been as chaotic a week as before, but I guess what it lacks in magnitude, the week has made up for in concentration, I think, and that's true for the past couple of days, actually. So the past couple of days we've had some, yesterday we had, like I said, significant rain. I'm sorry, I need to find a quieter place to film because, good grief, there's so many cars coming now. There we go. Okay, so, right, as I was saying, bad weather. I realised I went close to the screaming children. Yeah, bad weather, and but it seemed like a typical storm. They're just like, whatever. It's one minor storm, no biggie, is what I thought when I was up in my room and I heard the thunder and lightning. I was like, okay, it's been a while, but I've slept directly through storms in the past, so this one doesn't seem too bad. This is a doozy. Then a while later, I hear my mum shouting from downstairs, being like, "Can you come and help me, please?" Like, but much more panicked than that. It's like, "Can you come help me, please?" Like that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, there's no time to lose here. Something has definitely happened. And I assumed that because of the storm and such that, whatever it was going to be outside. And yes, the door was open when I got down. And yeah, it turns out the garage was flooded. So we were there clearing out water, mostly sweeping the water, which I never thought as I would say. That was it really. They were sweeping the water, and it took quite some time. But it's all okay now. We had to move a few things, and also we left the garage door open when we decided that later on was a good idea to go for a walk. again, I mentioned this in the last stream I did, which actually was on the Butter Bunch, so you wouldn't have seen it necessarily. And now there's wind. I can't really get to a place without wind, I'm afraid. So what happened after this video, we decided to go for a walk straight after. Mostly because my mum is doing this charity thing where you're supposed to walk 300,000 steps in the 30 days of September, which averages out to about 10,000 a day. But by this point, actually, because of the garage thing, she's already done 5,000. So mostly, she had that covered. However, there's a little bit to go. So we went outside, and of course it starts pouring again. Not as bad as last time, because the garage didn't flood for a second time. Thank goodness, because we left it open. Which was, again, in hindsight, a terrible plan. Even if we did want it to try. But yeah, it was still enough to completely soak us. So you can imagine Carl when we got back. He asked like, "Oh, how was the walk and stuff?" Because he doesn't tend to go on them. And I said, to be honest, it was exactly what I expected. Because yeah, I knew it was going to rain again. I was somewhat prepared for it. Again, not really to the level, but it was better than nothing. I don't really mind walking outside in the rain necessarily. I just channel my inner Gene Kelly for some of it. No, but in all seriousness, it was not ideal, but it was fine. Although I did wonder how exactly some of the suggested paths were going to be shorter than the ones we ended up going down, which is just a regular route, and how not turning around before we got to a hill was supposed to take less time to get back home than going down the hill and then walking back up it again. That still does not make any sense to me, but I was outvoted in that proposal, so there you go. And so then of course we got back. The plan was to jump straight in the bath and actually warm up and everything. But while I was waiting for my turn, I did my usual thing, and I went on YouTube for a bit. And I saw in my recommended section that MasterCoX uploaded a video called "What If Piccolo Had a Son?" And the reason that's significant is because MasterCoX is the inspiration I had for doing what if content in general, and then later on specifically Dragon Ball what ifs. In fact, most of the deep Dragon Ball lore that I learnt from back in the day was actually from his channel and his work, because he explains it so well and is such an engaging storyteller. So huge inspiration there. But my first ever what if story was, of course, what if Piccolo had a son, which Masako in the day actually denounced as an idea when it was proposed to him later on. But it turns out that somebody actually suggested what if future Gohan had a son and then went back into the past. Which I thought two things. Well, one, how is this going to go? How are we going to get to this point? Turns out it was a surrogate son of Piccolo, and that's how Master got around it. But also, what was I saying? Yeah, but also because, I mean, quite frankly, I expected them just, go along with Pan, especially because Pan is trending right now because of the new movie. So yeah, don't quite understand that, but there you go. It was an interesting video. I played up the whole going insane angle because Masako had, taken the last original idea that I actually had, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was all a joke. Obviously, Masako himself has said before that no one owns one particular what-if scenario. You can have your own spin and such. In fact, I took that to heart, and my second ever what-if series was actually based on 2 of his own, just combined together because I knew people wanted to see them combined. It's a bit of a double-edged sword doing what-ifs in some ways, because on one hand, you want to actually tackle some of the questions that most people are asking, because YouTube, one of the things it has is that if you answer specific questions, you're more likely to get searched. But you're likely to appear in searches because people are asking that question. They're typing it into YouTube. But of course, the problem with that is that if more people are asking that question, more people are also answering it. So it's the same with everything. The more of a market there is for something, the more competition you will have in said market. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I would say, I'm one of the prime Masako clones in that regard, because the style of what if that most people tackle nowadays actually isn't that similar to his, but I vastly prefer the method that he has. So I'm not altering that much right now, but I have taken steps since the 500 subscriber special on the Butter Bunch to rebrand that a little bit. I didn't even talk about the fact that he actually once again denounced another idea that I've been tackling for some time, which of course was what if Goku married Suno, and that was on the grounds that Suno didn't have enough personality in the series to work from. And that is true, that's a concern, but I just gave her something to do. That's the thing with blank slates. If you add a little bit more to them, then they end up actually, so you not even doesn't just make a contribution, but also just standing out. That's one of the essences of character there. I don't know. That's what happened on that day. Then I had another stream because there was a 5 year later schedule, and so yeah, by the end of it, I was shattered. I mean, Aiden called me after I'd had dinner and got ready for bed and did all those other things I normally do. Dessert, TV, that kind of stuff. And he asked, can we work on the script for blah blah blah, because I'm not going to say what it was. I just said, I'm sorry, but it's been 2 nights in a row. I can't do this right now. Good night. So I will probably be doing that later today, because it's a good idea that I say that for a lot of things, obviously. I feel like some people, Monet particularly, actually thinks that we just facilitate each other, actually. But quite honestly, we've actually butted heads with this particular idea more than we normally do. Mostly focusing on who the main character of this thing should be, and just how to structure the basic idea, or even what to include in it. And once again, I got outvoted on something, but I will discuss that more when I'm not going to be as vague about the idea, but I'll say it has something to do with Mutant Girl episode 5, the thing that I want to be in that will not be in there. So if anyone is, for some reason, watching archived Walking Wednesdays in the future, then just know we planned the thing that you would see all the way back here. It's in early September 2022. Go figure. I don't know. Time is a strange concept. Yeah, and then speaking of time, today there was a bus driver who really did not have time for anything. We had a bit of an issue driving down here, where at one point my mum saw there's a free section, so went towards it, but then the bus that was in the space between actually accelerated, meaning that she couldn't actually get there. And the bus driver started beeping, then she beeped back, and then afterwards, actually, the bus driver, like when after it happened, after she did a very impressive maneuver that would have really given Carl a new respect for her driving. Actually, the bus driver pulled over on the opposite side and actually like started like shouting and having a go at her. So that was an unpleasant conclusion to that. I think we've charted it down to road rage, essentially, or to him having a bad day, like after the fact, because it was a while ago. So we were talking about it a little bit later. Of course, there's the other possibility that my mum suggested that if she'd been a guy, then he wouldn't have actually like shouted or had a go as much or at all, really. And I said, well, I mean, we don't know that for sure, but it's a possibility. I said this before, I'm not one to shut down the idea of a possible sexist agenda existing. I'm just not one to necessarily completely like jump to that conclusion without, knowing the person or whatever was going on or something. It's not my first thought as to an explanation, essentially. Nor was it hers, like the second or third, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, the reason I bring that up is because there's actually another possibility. It reminded me of something. The other possibility was that if she had been a guy, that the bus driver would have threatened violence. Because, depending on how aggravated you are, there's always the possibility that somebody's just looking for some form of a fight or some sort of way to assert themselves. And unfortunately, between males of the species that we call Homo sapiens, that comes up more often than I would like. I've witnessed that which times. Fortunately, it hasn't happened to me since primary school, really. Or possibly, the odd "do you want to fight" kind of thing from secondary school, and I was just like, no. So, but yeah, it does occur. And in fact, the thing it reminded me of was actually this stand-up comedian whose name I've forgotten, but because of her short hair, apparently, she actually comes off as quite masculine, especially from the back. So, one time what happened was that she was walking down the street, and this guy just starts pushing into her. And then, she's pushing back a little bit, and then afterwards they kind of like, split apart, and they start having a match, just going, what, that kind of thing. So, a highly intellectual discussion. Then again, much like that bus driver, highly intellectual. So, I guess, again, it makes sense as a parallel. But the thing that was different in this situation was the fact that eventually, after saying what for a bit, and she just goes, okay, mate, we're here forever. What's going to happen? And then it clicked in the guy's brain. He said, I am so sorry. I thought you were a bloke. And in case people don't know, bloke means man in British slang. So, yeah. Apparently in this instance, that's when you back down. That's when you don't have a go at somebody. That's is that sexism towards your own sex? I think. I don't know. So yeah, again, we can hypothesize all we want. Really, all that happened was, that he was like, that is the worst effing driving I ever saw, and you don't overtake a bus and whatever. And then I can't remember exactly what my mum said, but to be honest, what she said afterwards made more sense. That's the worst driving he'd ever seen, then he's never been to Madrid. Well, that was my comment. Because to be perfectly honest, that was some of the best driving I've seen out of her, because, again, the maneuver she actually pulled in order to not actually miss the roundabout turn was pretty impressive. So yeah. You know what, I'm glad I got all of that out of the way, because I'm running out of time for Walking Wednesday, And it just so happens that, yeah, all the non-YouTube stuff is more interesting than the YouTube stuff. Because essentially what's happened there is that during the stream on the Butter Bunch that I did with What If Pickle Had a Son, there were some people there that actually jumped the gun a little bit and created the Butter Bunch Discord server, which we'd actually agreed after hitting 500 that we were going to actually make. So now we have people suggesting a bunch of wacky what if suggestions in the actual server itself, possibly as well as the comments. But yeah, we'll see, because the next episode, I guarantee it'll happen again, and people will be giving me paragraphs of scenarios that they want and things like that. And I'll say, well, and the reason I made that server not because I don't want the comments. I do want the comments. It's just so that people actually have an avenue to talk about this stuff. Because again, the main satisfaction I get from YouTube is interacting with people. Yes, I always regret missing out on the comments and stuff that happen nowadays. Because I'm logged into my main account, and yeah, the ones that don't get notifications from the Butter Bunch channel. Anyway, that's a separate thing. As for Muse and Girl Season 3, that's just still in the works. I can't really say much else about it, other than the fact that I think it is hands down the best episode so far. At least the best put together. Story-wise, I'd say episode 12 of Season 2 still, because episode 3 of Season 1 is just, setup. But it's getting there. So, yeah, I don't know when you'll see that, but you'll see it soon. Progress is being made. And progress for the sake of progress shall not be discouraged in this instance. So please leave a like or dislike, because your opinion matters, as come with us already. Thank you all for your patience. And on that note, until next time, farewell.